Alright guys, in today's video we're going to talk about the history of Xbox. This is a video I want to do for a long time. I wanted to talk about the history of Xbox, the leadership behind Xbox, their products, their time, the decisions they made, right, over the years. And then by the end, and I've got my man Ramses over here, not that that's important, but he's over there in the corner.
Hello.
He will chime in.
Coolest. Thank you.
He will chime in every now and then. But we really want to kind of just break down the full history of Xbox, where they started, kind of where their peak was, where they are now, how that compares to PlayStation, obviously, the games that they released, and how their decisions led them to where they are now and in the position. I think in the end of this video, we're probably going to talk about the future of Xbox a little bit, how we see Game Pass impacting it. You know, will Xbox ever release another box, physical, a piece of hardware, and so on? These kinds of questions will probably be answered in the end of the video. So if you're just interested in specific parts or specific questions or a certain genre, you want us to listen how we talk about the Xbox One era or whatever, we're going to put timestamps down in the video. So we have a few key questions. I'll try to keep it as simple as possible, and then you can skip through the video easier and find the moments that you want to hear. Now, obviously, unless you want to start before that, I mean, you could even go before the early 2000s when the original Xbox came out, how it came to be, when, for example, the name Xbox was mentioned for the first time. And I think that was at like I just remember he said it at an event, right? Robbie Bach was the CEO at the time, I think.
Yep.
And
yes,
he mentioned the name Xbox even before the Xbox came out, not even specifically to a piece of hardware, but I think he spoke about the Xbox ecosystem or something like this, where that term Xbox was heard for the first time, right?
I mean, officially, the very first Xbox prototype, along with the official announcement that Microsoft will begin working on an Xbox on a console, was GDC. March, I think, of 2000 is when Bill Gates himself went to GDC. The first time he's ever been to GDC. Bill Gates is not a gamer at all. Where he revealed that Microsoft will be working on a games console, and he revealed the very first Xbox prototype live on stage. So that was the official introduction to Xbox as a brand, as everything was at I think 2000, GDC 2000,
right?
Is when Xbox really,
and
that's
it's funny,
the first
right?
Utterance of the name.
It is so funny now in the context, because now Xbox is like its own fortress, but at that time you would bring in someone like Bill Gates, who is associated obviously with Microsoft, but Xbox wasn't really defined. It felt like a show like that felt much more like the old Microsoft shows when Steve Ballmer would dance around on stage and scream about Windows 95.
I love Steve Ballmer, by the way.
Of course, everyone does.
I have to put that out there. I love Steve Ballmer so much.
My favorite Steve Ballmer moment is when he denied that the iPhone is going to be a success. He was laughing. It's like, a $500 phone, that's ridiculous. Nobody will buy this. Steve Ballmer's a genius, okay, and everyone knows that. But it felt
the
like...
most enthusiastic person in the world.
Yeah, there might be a reason for it. I don't dare to speculate. But I just want to say that was the first time. I remember that Bill Gates standing and revealing that console. Didn't they also have...
Do you remember what do you remember what the very first Xbox prototype looked like? It looked like a monster. It looked like a travesty upon the world and upon humanity. It looked like something... it kind of looked like the platypus, where you look at it and you're like, what in God's name... How is this thing made? It was this huge... It was a literal X.
I'm looking at it right now. I put it on screen.
Yeah. It's a huge aluminum X with this green, orb in the center of it. But do you want me to give you some background on how Xbox became a thing? Like, just to prep everyone, to give some people some context?
All right, but keep it brief. Keep it brief.
I'll keep it brief. So the big reason Microsoft decided to take on Xbox as like a project is... and listen, I don't mean to glaze Sony over this, but the PlayStation 2. That is a primary reason Microsoft decided to enter the console game. And it's not for the reason you thought. It's because the PlayStation 2, other than being the most successful console ever made by units sold, there was a serious fear in Microsoft that Sony was planning to create basically the living room box, which was this idea that you buy one box for all your living room needs. This entertainment box in the living room. That's what Microsoft was worried about. They saw the PlayStation 2 as a platform on which Sony could, let's say, combine a few pieces of their tech, and bam, you have an all-in-one living room entertainment system right there. You can stream, you can watch TV, you can listen to music. That's what Microsoft was worried about, and it saw that possibility as an existential threat to the Microsoft as a company and as its business model, right? And to give you some example, to give you like more context about Microsoft, you gotta keep in mind it wasn't this behemoth that Microsoft is today. It was a huge company, but it was primarily a software company that everyone associated with like at Excel and boring office work. It wasn't at all as this huge diverse brand that it is today. So the way the original Xbox team at the time was just a bunch of DirectX developers, if I remember correctly. And to really, to give them credit and to give them names, it was Otto Burkus, I think I'm saying that name most definitely incorrectly, Ted Hayes, Kevin Bacchus, Seamus Blackley, and Nat Brown. You can't really say who was the founder of Xbox, but if you had to really pin it down, those 5 guys were the first to really envision the idea of a home entertainment system or of a gaming system for Microsoft, a rival for the Sony PlayStation and Nintendo, of course. But they were primarily worried about Nintendo or Sony. Nintendo was very clearly a gaming company, and they stayed in their lane. But the idea for it was Xbox was going to be a small PC, basically, that Microsoft was going to sell to the American consumer market as this console, but also as this entertainment system. From the get-go, pretty much everyone on the early Xbox team, including the original Xbox team, they were furiously fighting this idea of the Xbox as this grand entertainment system, and they were adamant that it had to be only a console and a gaming console. And that was super difficult to explain that to Bill Gates, who was primarily just a tech dude. But they did manage to convince him by basically masking the idea of the Xbox as this way to dissect parts of Windows and work on them separately, and then later reinfuse them into Windows and make Windows better. That's what Nat Brown at least told Bill it was going to be, because at the time Windows would take 5 to 10 minutes to start up.
Yeah.
So one of the selling points that kind of sold Bill Gates on it was they basically took the current version of Windows that they had, they stripped it down to its bare minimum parts, hooked up a PlayStation 2 emulator on it, and then booted up Tomb Raider right there in front of Bill Gates. And Bill Gates was like so and taken aback. He's like, oh my god, you just booted this thing up in 5 seconds, something that we now take for granted. But Bill was like, if we can do this with Windows, it will be revolutionary.
Interesting.
And then they went through trials and tribulations, and then eventually the Xbox was released. And it's really I'm really shortening it down, but along the way they got help from the very first Xbox CEO. Technically speaking, though, the very first Xbox CEO was the Microsoft head of hardware, Rick Thompson, but he lasted a few months. And then the real head, you could say, of Xbox was Robbie Bach, who was the first CEO of Xbox, and he basically led the team when Rick Thompson left a few months after the project started. Another highly important person in the creation of the Xbox was Jay Allard. Jay Allard is one of those like highly intelligent, extremely idiosyncratic type dudes who just oozes intelligence, and he was such an absolute visionary. He had worked for Microsoft in the past, and then he left just because he felt like there was no challenge for him to chase. And then in the time off Microsoft, when he was just he had I would assume he made enough money, so he was kind of coasting. And then he was engaging with entertainment media, and he slowly came to the conclusion that entertainment will soon be a software business. And that was a time that Nat Brown kind of served as the network head of the original Xbox team. So he had a bunch of contacts, and so he contacted Jay, and he was like, hey, we have this new idea. For the time, we're calling it the Direct Xbox. That was the original kind of code name for it.
Oh, it comes from DirectX? Is
yeah,
that actually
from DirectX.
No
it comes
way.
from DirectX.
I didn't know that. That's super interesting.
Yeah. So, and all these dudes, Otto, Ted, Burkus, Hayes, Bacchus, Blackley, and Brown, I think Brown was working in like something related to like behind the scene codes in Windows, but all the other 4 were in DirectX. That's where the X in Xbox came from. But he contacted Jay, and he's like, hey, we're making this new console. And Jay, along with a close friend of his, Cam Ferroni, they basically hired themselves on the team. Rick Thompson describes Jay and Ferroni just entering his office and just starting working. They didn't even introduce themselves. They're like, yeah, we're going to work on this project now. And he's like, all right. And they basically were, especially Jay. Jay is this, to his credit, he really values teamwork. He hates the idea of whittling down a story to just a couple people, and especially just one person. So Jay had this. He is primarily responsible for putting the Ethernet into the Xbox, and not having the Xbox have dial-up internet or a built-in modem. That was a serious point of debate, is whether we put a hard drive and an Ethernet cable in the Xbox, or whether we put dial-up in it. Jay Allard and a lot of people on the Xbox team, but pretty much everyone else in Microsoft was like, no, we have to put a modem in there. At the time, 95% of America's internet came from dial-up. So putting an Ethernet cable there, or putting anything related to that kind of internet was just ridiculous. But Jay Allard saw it as the future. He said, no, you don't understand. The internet's going to be huge. The technology is going to be, dial-up is going to be in the past. Anyway, after many heated meetings, they finally put a hard drive and an Ethernet cable in the Xbox. And furthermore, they added a port to connect multiple Xboxes, up to 4, because Jay Allard was also adamant that gaming together was going to be a huge selling point, and that the future of gaming was online. But for now, physical co-op gaming still had a lot of importance. And I know I'm saying Jay Allard's team, but I should emphasize that Jay Allard himself is very, very or highly emphasizes the work that the team put in. So I understand I'm saying Jay Allard, but also a lot of people on the team shared his viewpoints. To again kind of go back slightly to the beginning of Xbox, I do want to reiterate a story that is present in the 2 primary pieces of research that I used, which was the Power On YouTube series that Xbox created to celebrate its 15th or 20th anniversary, and Russell De Marina's book Game of X Volume 1, which is Game of X Volume 1 is invaluable, just getting the history of the original Xbox. And the Xbox series Power On YouTube was just a fun, very simplified overview of just the entire Xbox brand up until I think 2020 to 2021.
Yeah, that's great. Because
but anyway,
that's I skipped that whole part in my research, so that's good. You have that addition.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
But I wanted to, the one thing I wanted to add is when Bill Gates was finally he agreed that Microsoft should respond to Sony's PlayStation 2, and he still wasn't very keen on the idea of a console. But for now, he said that fine, a console will be our Trojan horse. Former Sony CEO Jack Tretton said on the Xbox Power On YouTube series of the first episode called Renegades, at around the 7-minute mark, he said, what Sony discovered was a console was really a Trojan horse to the living room, and once that device got into the living room, it could be a multimedia entertainment device. So that's what Bill Gates wanted to reply to. He wanted a Microsoft reply to that, multi-entertainment device. So the early Xbox team, their main rivals were this group of people who was former. Do you know what the 3DO console was? Do you have any idea what the 3DO console was?
I heard about it, no, but tell me.
The 3DO console was this failed console that I think was funded by EA. But that's really all there is to say about the 3DO, other than it was kind of the first console to really create you could say realistic-ish looking 3D graphics, but that unfortunately wasn't enough for it to push it over the line. And then also to give context, at the time, Sega was beginning to pull out of the console game after the lackluster success of the Dreamcast. But anyway, so the original Xbox team was up against the X3DO guys who were recently hired by Microsoft, and they were basically pitted against each other in what was called Bill meetings, where Bill Gates would just shred your idea to bits. But the 3DO guys came in, and he was like, we're going to build a standard console, this, that, and the other thing. And what was ironic, or as Seamus Blackley said in the first episode of the Power On series, is you don't enter a market to do exactly what the market is doing. You enter a market to disrupt it. So all the Xbox Xbox, the original Xbox team was just like scoffing at how just boring this presentation is. And Nat Brown, who had been in these Bill meetings before, knew that Bill was a tech guy. So he knew that the thing that really excited Bill was new technology. So, like I said earlier, they built this Frankenstein's monster of the earliest Xbox prototype, which was just a Windows that they had just taken random parts out of, the most useless parts out of, and then hooked it up to a PlayStation emulator, put Tomb Raider on there, and that kind of was a huge selling point for Bill. And the X3DO guys were like, well, that's unfair. No one told us we could build hardware. And someone in the room turned to them, and I think it might have been Bill Gates, who said, well, nobody told them to build hardware either. So, and then in another highly important part in the Xbox, the original Xbox timeline, was something called the Valentine's Day Massacre, where on Valentine's Day 2000, Bill Gates walked into the executive room for basically all the execs that were now working on the original Xbox. One of them being highly important man by the name of Ed Fries, who was the leader of what would become Microsoft Game Studios, and was the guy who also hired George Packman, who was also in charge of third-party games for the Xbox. But Ed Fries, for the moment, let's just simplify his role as the games guy. He was the guy in charge of creating games for the Xbox, and he was head of Microsoft Game Studios. So Ed Fries and Robbie Bach, who at that time was now officially the CEO of Xbox, we're just waiting on Bill. Bill enters, and the first thing he says in the meeting is, "This is a fucking insult to everything I've done in this company."
Oh my god!
Because
so they're showing him this console for the first time, basically, what they've been working on, and that's what he says.
So at this point, he was sold on the idea of Xbox, but Jay Allard basically came to him, and this was like late in the stage when the idea of Xbox was greenlit, and so they were deciding on the official features and the hardware, and Jay Allard basically told Bill, "You're not going to have a multimedia entertainment system. You're going to have a gaming console." And Bill was furious, but Allard took it. He was completely calm. He took it, and he just told Bill, "I'm sorry. It has to be a games console. What you're thinking is just going to be this slow hunk of junk that no one's going to buy. We need a strong, effective games console that we can then pivot into a multimedia entertainment system. But right now, the code for that, the hardware for that, it would just be too slow. It's not at all. It's a completely different, opposite business model that will fail." So that was the context of this. So the Valentine's Day, it's called the Valentine's Day Massacre because on Valentine's Day in 2000 was basically the final meeting that was going to green light Xbox officially. And so it's that meeting that Bill Gates walked in and just throws down the PowerPoint slides and just goes, "This is a fucking insult to everything I've done in this company." And it was a meeting that dragged on. It was supposed to be like 45 minutes to an hour. It dragged on for like 4 hours plus. And it was just Bill Gates ranting about how this is not going to be useful for Windows, because that's another thing, is like, it's not going to run Windows. It's going to run a different kind of software that's going to be Windows inspired, but in no way in hell is it going to run Windows. It's just too slow, and it's not at all the software that Xbox needs. And because originally, remember, Bill Gates was sold as, this is just going to be an avenue for us to fix certain features or to enhance certain features of Windows to make Windows better. That's how it was sold. And now he's being told it's not going to do that at all. In fact, it's just going to be a regular-ass gaming console.
Yeah.
So this meeting just kept dragging on, and eventually every single member in that meeting had to contact their loved ones or their family to inform them that they will not be present at dinner at Valentine's Day. And it came to the point where Robbie Bach stood up and he was like, "Okay, let's not do it then. Let's not." That's how furious Bill was. And Bill's popular image, at least I didn't know this, but from what you see of him, you think he's this calm, swell guy. No, sir. He is this vicious tech bro billionaire who does not at all agree with... Allegedly. But he does not at all agree with subpar work.
No, I mean, obviously, look, he's grown a very, very big company. You probably got to be a bit of a person like that to make that work. But then ultimately he did sign it off. So that meeting dragged on. Did they agree that night to then move forward nonetheless? Or
precisely because someone in the meeting was like, when Robbie Walker was like, "Okay, let's not do it." someone in the meeting was like, okay, but what about Sony? And then Bill calmed down, and he just looked at them, and he was just like, do it, go ahead. And then they got Steve Ballmer, who then grilled them on the business part, because they're like, okay, what's your business plan? And the Xbox team was like, business plan? And he was like, yeah, what's your return on investment? What's this, that, and the other thing? What are your metrics? And they're like, we're gonna make a
we
console.
like video games.
He's like, okay, what's your yeah, that's it. And he was furious, but finally, once they got Steve Ballmer's approval, then it was go. And then it was trials and tribulations of getting the software, and they originally were not going to use NVIDIA's graphics drivers because they were giving them an insanely high price. So they were originally going to go with this like small tech startup, but then NVIDIA is it leaked that Microsoft was working with NVIDIA, and so their stock went up. And so the CEO of NVIDIA was rang up like Robbie Bach when he heard that they're not gonna use NVIDIA, and he's like, well, yelled and had this whole shouting match with him, because if Microsoft pulls out, that's gonna affect his stock market price, and NVIDIA was a public company. But anyway, they managed to negotiate NVIDIA into a much more manageable price, and I should say the last thing, I guess, about the Xbox, even though it is an unfortunate overview, and I do highly recommend, if anyone's interested, to read Dave Marina's Game of X Volume 1 book. It's a really good book on the history of Xbox. But unfortunately, just 3 weeks to the goddamn day Xbox releases, 9/11 happens. Because keep in mind,
right,
Xbox
that's right. It launched November 15th, 2001.
You're correct. It did launch November 15th, 2001. And there, in that part of the book, it describes how everyone on the team was just scrambling to. One guy had to drive all the way across the states for an event in Seattle while he was in New York. Another guy had to drive all the way down to Mexico to personally oversee the hardware and the Xbox boxes that were ready to cross over to the United States. Like pretty much in the final 3 weeks, everyone in the Xbox team was like living somewhere out of the United States, just because flying was banned after 9/11.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I'll add, though, is Robbie Bach, the CEO, needed to teach Bill Gates, because he was officially going to be there. They had bought out Madison Square Garden, they turned it all green, and Xbox's midnight release was going to be at the very first Toys R Us, rest in peace Toys R Us, in Madison Square Garden. But Robbie Bach, if I remember correctly, or someone on the Xbox exec team, had to teach Bill Gates how to play a game, because he needed to look like he was enjoying himself. So they went over to his hotel room, and they're like, all right, time to set up the Xbox. Oh no, the TV doesn't have the correct plugins. So they immediately had to run to any hardware store, grab like an HDMI cable that then connected to another cable that then connected to the Xbox cable, and they were playing, whatever, like E-Bum's World on a 15-inch hotel TV screen. Xbox launch, and
at launch. I have the footage of the launch event on screen right now, so people can see it as well. Here's big Bill Gates putting his hand on the Xbox, selling it to us, talking about how great it is. But it's great to have that kind of content. The context.
I should say one last. I know I'm annoying, but one last thing.
No, it's fine.
The Xbox, the final reveal trailer for the Xbox console was E3, right? March 2001. And I tried everywhere, and I can't find the clip. All I can find is the clip in the Xbox Power On documentary. But Robbie Bach is on stage. He's talking about how Xbox revolutionized everything. He officially has the original Xbox. It's black. It's not the aluminum weird X thing that they're going on. It actually looks like a game console. He goes there and he's like, and right now you will see the power of Xbox. And he goes to turn it on live on stage in E3 2001 in March, and it doesn't turn on in front of everyone, in front of the whole E3. The original Xbox doesn't turn on. He touches it. He tries to turn it on once. He tries to turn it on twice. He tries to turn it on 3 times. And then he's like, Well, once they bring it up there on screen, anyway, we will be confidently shipping this this piece of hardware across the entire. And,
he's a professional. He's a professional.
Yeah, and then on top of that, that was also the reveal trailer for Halo. And if anyone remembers the original Halo when it was revealed in E3, it had a terrible frame rate. It looked awful. And the March E3 2001 E3 for Xbox was quite the disaster. But then it released to acclaim and success. Although there was problems in Europe because it was way too pricey, and even the head of Xbox Europe went to wherever Microsoft is placed, and basically ran this really intense meeting where he's like, you don't understand, it's way too pricey. And Steve Ballmer, who was already furious at the fact that Xbox wasn't going to make a profit in the year, was totally, or at least the Xbox team was totally unwilling to change the European price tag for the Xbox because that was the only area that was set to be profitable. And they're like, dude, listen, if we go back to, they didn't tell him that directly, but the Xbox team was like, if we go back to Steve Ballmer and we're like, oh, by the way, none of our main regions are going to turn a profit, we're screwed. So they're like, sorry, dude. So in a way, they actually purposely caused the Xbox to kind of have this mixed launch in Europe, and unfortunately it didn't catch on in Japan. But
yeah, it never did.
Xbox launched and it was a success, and yeah.
Yeah, it was. Do you know the launch titles that they had for the original Xbox?
Yeah, Halo and E-Bums World, and then they also had a racing game that unfortunately I can't remember the name of. But those were the big three on Xbox.
Was it also Dead or Alive? A Dead or Alive game? Do you mean Project Gotham Racing? Maybe was that the
yes, Project Gotham
Racing game, right?
That was
yeah, that's it. But I mean, it was the Halo console, right? I guess that was another thing. That was the first time we saw Halo. Halo Combat Evolved was introducing the brand. People loved it. I think what I took away, obviously, look, I'm not a console player, so I never owned an Xbox. But obviously, at the time, friends of mine had them. And what I heard already at the time is that never before has a first-person shooter felt so great with a controller.
Precisely.
Right? Because, of course, there were first-person shooter attempts on other consoles and people were playing them. But when you compare to mouse and keyboard, it always felt kind of clunky. And to move around, you felt like a tank, right? Halo was the first game that somewhat overcame that challenge, it seems like, and made it really fun and really accessible. That was 2001 as well, yeah.
Also, to add to that point, the only shooter game that people saw successful on console was goddamn GoldenEye on the Nintendo 64. That was the only game that people saw as a successful shooter on the console. And Halo, what made also differentiate Halo, why it was a huge success, is it was built for a controller.
Yes.
However, I do want to take a slight detour and say, quite infamously, Halo wasn't announced by Bill Gates or by anyone. Halo was announced by Steve Jobs, because Bungie originally was a Mac-only game developer.
Right, right.
It rarely developed games for Windows, and there was a bit of drama when Bungie, it was going through, I think it was Mysticism 2 or something, a game that they released that had a major issue. That major issue was it would brick your whole PC. It would fry your hard drive. It would completely nuke your system because some type of error in the code. And so they had to recall the whole game, and they took a huge financial hit, which allowed Microsoft or the Xbox team to purchase Bungie at the time.
Yeah, that's true.
And, there was a lot of drama when Steve Jobs was mad, but eventually Halo was released, and then also Halo 2 was released to massive success, even more success than
and
Halo
only
1,
and only 3 years later. It's another thing, right? 3 years later. What a wild development cycle that must have been for them to release a second game 3 years later.
Yeah, and also the thing about the Xbox is what laid the foundations for what later to come, what made it so unique and revolutionary, is that since it was released a year after the PlayStation 2, not only was it the most powerful console of its generation, which in my opinion is kind of cheating, because if you're releasing at the very end basically of a generation, because the 360 would release in 2005, so they were at the kind of real tail end of that console generation. But it was also the first console that really, really hammered home the idea of co-op gameplay. Like not only could you hook up 4 controllers to the Xbox, but you could also hook up other Xboxes, up to 4 Xboxes. So that's 16 players all playing in one room, and that was a huge driving force of the success of the original Xbox, and also Xbox Live, which was an absolutely revolutionary idea that released 1 year after the original Xbox.
You're right. I mean, it was an exciting thing, the idea to play now online. It had, like you said, the Ethernet port for the first time. And I think, to be honest, like besides games like Halo and suddenly first-person shooters feeling good, to me, that would have been the big selling point, to say, okay, now I can hook this up. There's this whole world of gaming out there with other people, whether it's co-op or like a competitive multiplayer like Halo 2, right? We spoke about it. Yeah, I mean, at that time, Xbox Live was already a thing for 2 years, I think, when that game came out. But that feels like it really kicked it off. It became like almost a template for online console first-person shooter games, right? On Xbox Live.
Oh yeah, no, it was the first of its kind. No, absolutely. Yeah. It was the very first console that had integrated online play in it. I mean, you could say the Dreamcast, but the Dreamcast failed, and the PlayStation 2 was neither here nor there. But the Xbox was the very first like online multiplayer and co-op console. That was a huge selling point of their. And I mean, it was very preliminary. It was probably not like you would expect it today. It was clunky and all that, but we were slowly moving out of this kind of dial-up era, and really, and you can really see how at this stage Xbox is pushing, right? They're pushing the envelope. They're like, we want to do something different. They are hungry. They want to do stuff. They're eager to achieve something. Not just with the games, but also with the overall console and features like online playability of games. So you can see how that was propelling them forward. And I mean, other games that are kind of noteworthy of that generation, I guess, like Knights of the Old Republic is obviously like a big prestige game that was on the console. That 1 and 2, play. Okay? Shout out Kreia.
Fable, Ninja Gaiden, Forza Motorsport I have here as well. So lots of these franchises really go back all the way and were on that console. And Project Gotham Racing 2, which I never played in my life, so I have no idea. But yeah.
And I should also, another thing I want to add to that was revolution about Xbox is the idea that you had, that you didn't need to log into like 2K's account to play online. Like Xbox's whole thing, you had one account, and you had and that's the account you used to play across all your online games and to find your friends there. It was basically, in a way, and you could really say on a technical level, Xbox Live was the very first social media network. Like, in my opinion, if you read about it, and you even in the book, in De Marina's book, Volume 1, you can feel how this was really the beginning of social media, and they didn't even know. They didn't even have a word for it.
Yeah, they didn't even know what they had, really, right?
Yeah, they didn't even know. But they had this idea of, like, you had one profile and you find people, and then the idea of seeing what your friends are playing was also revolutionary. It was on PC, but not on console. Like, it really, like, the Xbox really was such a solid foundation for sure. What later would spring more.
Exactly, like Xbox Live really became like the blueprint for console online, like online consoles. In 2002 already, which is wild. So it really was visionary. I mean, the internet wasn't even around for that long, So
no, dude, 95% of America's internet was dial-up at that time.
Exactly.
95.
Yeah.
I mean.
But then one, I guess, to kind of conclude the first Xbox, because we're spending a lot of time just on the first Xbox generation. But in 2002, the first big acquisition is they bought Rare. Microsoft bought Rare in 2002. I had the number somewhere for how much, I forgot now. But it wasn't so much, like 560 million or something. It wasn't even that much. I mean, it's a lot of money. But
I mean, adjusted for inflation, that's like $32 quadrillion now.
Probably it is. But then also interesting to see the lifetime sales of the first Xbox versus the PlayStation 2. Do you want to? Oh yeah. Do you want to come? Do you have a guess?
No, it's not even close, dude. It's not even close. I know.
Do you want to guess?
No. I know the numbers. PlayStation 2 is like 160 million, and the original Xbox is like 24 million. It's not even close.
That's it.
That
is wild. So, but I guess you have to understand, sometimes when you do something brave, like you invest into a new brand and you take risks and even financial damage, as you said, it didn't return profits. You just got to run with it. You have to believe in it. Now, even you see the sales, you're like, okay, this was basically already over, right? 24 million sold lifetime versus 160 million. That's not even close, right? Not even close to close.
I will say, I think on a sheer unit level, I think the PlayStation 2 won, and I'm a PlayStation 2 diehard. Technically, if we're speaking solely on, and when I say technically, I mean like the actual tech involved, the Xbox, in my opinion, won. And of course, it came out a year late, whatever, but Xbox with Xbox Live, I think, to me, the Xbox is an infinitely more revolutionary console than the PlayStation 2, in my opinion. Yeah. I think it's ridiculous, the amount of things that Jay Allard and Robbie Bach and Ed Fries and all these hard-working dudes worked on. And Beth Featherstone also was highly important, and Laura Fryer. And unfortunately, we're not going to get to all these names, but I do also want to say one last thing about the original Xbox is Seamus Blackley and Laura Fryer created something called the Advanced Technology Group as part of Xbox. And the Advanced Technology Group, their whole thing was to get third-party developers and basically create a customer service program that introduced them to DirectX and their tools, and basically told them, if you had any problems at all whatsoever, contact us immediately.
Yeah.
And which was entirely different from Sony, because the PlayStation 2 was infamously difficult to develop for. But regardless of all that, the Xbox, just in my opinion, more revolutionary. The team behind it, reading about it, was so inspirational. And for me, at least, I will say that the Xbox won, quote unquote, the console war, at least for me, on a sheer technical and revolutionary and foundational level. Like, the Xbox forever changed everything, in my opinion.
Yeah, it did, and it's, you also have to put into consideration at the time. Now, a console launch, or whatever, a big product launch, tech launch, we've done it so many times. These factories, all the channels are set. How you promote it, how you get developers on board, and so on. At that time, that was all untreaded ground. People don't know what to do. So, like you said, people had to travel around to receive the boxes that probably came from abroad and make sure the quality is good so they can be shipped to stores. Other people need to go and recruit developers. You need to get people interested in your system so they make games for it because you need games. So at that time, it feels like Xbox and Microsoft, in its very early days, they were just like putting their feelers out and trying to understand what they have here, really. Starting from this idea, like you said, of the multimedia machine, and obviously we're going to get to that with the Xbox One, where it's like all about TV here and TV there.
The disaster.
And it was a disaster, but that was actually them achieving the original goal of this console. But then it being boiled down into just the gaming console in the beginning, making these compromises. Yeah, and the whole journey is super interesting. But then in 2005, so also interesting, only a 4-year life cycle. The Xbox One, the original, right? Insane. 4 years. In 2005, the Xbox 360 launches. And you can almost see from everything we just talked about how that device was spawned out of this hunger, this hunger to create almost a 2.0 version. We can do better. Because in those years, from 2001 to 2005, a lot of stuff happened in terms of the internet, availability of faster internet, availability of tech, graphic accelerator chips and so on. There was a lot going on, a lot of things changing. So they were like, actually, it's only been 4 years, but we can build a machine that is better, that is faster, that has better internet capabilities, and so on. So on November 22nd, 2005, in North America at least, the Xbox 360 launches with a few notable launch titles, actually. Call of Duty 2, Perfect Dark Zero, Gotham Racing 3, Cameo, Need for Speed Most Wanted. Maybe not the greatest lineup, the launch lineup, right?
Need for Speed Most Wanted is like one of the most beloved Need for Speed games ever.
And I did like that. I played it on PC as well. It's a great game. I loved it as well, also with friends. And it's been copied so many times. So many other games introduced now the cops are behind you and you have to escape kind of mechanic. There are so many aspects that game inspired. But yeah, so here it is now. The Xbox 360 has launched. And it felt like, I wasn't in the console sphere at the time, but it felt like the excitement was noticeable. Everyone wanted an Xbox 360. The graphics looked stunning at the time, right? Everyone was like, oh my God, that looks so good. So yeah, I remember friends of mine having them. Everyone was hanging out, smoking weed and playing these video games on this console all the time. And then for me, to be honest with you, there are a whole bunch of games. Like, for example, I think the first Gears of War came out on Xbox 360.
Yeah, that changed. That was the poster child for graphics.
Right, exactly. And quite often they do look good, the Gears of War games, but yeah, it also how the third-person shooter, this kind of just this type of gameplay that that Gears of War presented, that was somewhat innovative. But for me, sorry, just as a final note, for me, the big game changer, really, of this generation, I think, was Call of Duty 4. Yeah, well, but Call of Duty 4, right? And then obviously Modern Warfare 2, which I think also still came out on the 360, I believe. And
yes, yeah.
And at that time, you have to understand, like Microsoft and Xbox, they had all the exclusive deals, for example. They had exclusive content first. They were making deals with companies like Machinima, like, oh, the new DLC comes out, we're doing 24-hour streams and stuff like that. Like, it felt like they were on the top of their game. You know, that was like now Xbox was really winning. That's how that felt at the time. And they almost felt too big to fail.
Fully agree. I mean, the Xbox 360 took everything that the original Xbox did, that revolutionized, and then made it even better. I never bought the original white Xbox. I was always a Xbox Slim, the black one that came out that I thought that was way cooler. But yeah, no, the 360 was it took everything that the Xbox did, the OG Xbox did, and made it even better. And I agree. I think Modern Warfare 2 really did, like, that was the Xbox game. Although I should also note Halo 3 and especially GTA 5, specifically GTA Online. I mean, that was just exploded on Xbox. Like, all the big GTA Online content creators like Vanoss and his crew and even Machinima, they were all playing on Xbox. You know? And to kind of emphasize just how forward-looking the Xbox team was during the OG and 360 era, when Xbox Live was announced all the way back in like mid 2002, Jay Allard took the stage, and I kind of want to quote what he said on at that E3. This is Jay Allard. He took the stage and he said, "Within 5 years, every important game will be online. There will be new categories of collaborative and competitive console games that are possible only online. The ability to download new worlds, levels, characters, weapons, vehicles, teams, statistics, and missions will change the way developers think about creating games and will change the way gamers play them." That was all the way in mid 2002, bro.
That's insane.
So this is what they were working towards. Like the whole, I don't know how that team really, they assembled them, but that whole team from the OG Xbox that all the way to the 360, which I think they were, team members left. Robbie Bach famously left as CEO. He actually tried to resign. Remember when I told you when the Xbox didn't turn on, the original Xbox didn't turn on at E3? He tried to resign then, but it was rejected. But at the time, the Xbox 360, the leader, the CEO, was Peter Moore. The 360 just came out and it won. It's not even. However, the PS3 did outsell it later on, lifetime wise. But I should say, man, oh man, did Sony just they could not. If they were trying to make the Xbox win, they wouldn't have failed this hard.
Yes.
It is phenomenal. They were saying all this stuff about how it'll be, because keep in mind, Sony was the PlayStation 3 released for $499, right? In 2006, which by the way, the reason in November 11, 2006, that's when the PS3 was released with a price tag of $499, which the Xbox 360, by the way, deliberately released 1 year before it because Peter Moore wanted everyone to feel that they were the leaders of this generation, that this was the generation to win, which is why it was released 1 year early. But the 360 was released with the same exact price tag as the original Xbox, $299.
Yeah.
Okay? So you have a $300 games console versus a $200 difference.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And to put it into more perspective, right? $499 in 2025, right, is $802. Okay. $299 today is roughly $500. I mean, it's insane.
Yeah.
It's insane. I don't know how at all. It's they every single wrong thing that they could have imagined, they did. It was amazing. I mean, in my opinion, the 360 was a success, but man, oh man, do you have to comment on Sony's failure. And that infamous E3 where they announced the price and it's just dead silence.
Yeah.
There's no cheering. There's no nothing. And the infamous when they were trying to show off the hardware, and the guy was like, all right, as you can see, I have this massive crab enemy. I have this crab enemy that I'm assaulting, and I'm like, wow, a giant crab. Amazing.
Yeah, I think PlayStation and Sony, they were coming out of the high train that they were on from PlayStation, from the first PlayStation, you know, because that was a huge success. That almost revolutionized and invented that type of console to an extent, the modern version. So people loved it, and they were like, Xbox, excuse me, that's ridiculous, you know. And admittedly, as we now looked a little bit at the history of Xbox at the time, it seemed quite chaotic, and they probably knew this as well, right? They know what's going on in other corporations, so they're like, that's not a threat to us.
Dude, they literally said, for the lead up to the PS3, they literally said it would be a privilege for people to work longer hours so they could afford the PS3.
Yeah.
They actually said that, dude.
So wild.
Insane.
So levels of arrogance, right? Like levels of arrogance
like,
here.
Yeah, exactly. Just, like Greek epic poetry levels of hubris.
Yes,
I mean, amazing.
Yeah. Absolutely amazing. So then here they are. Now they've been challenged. Keep in mind, the previous generation, we said it, 24 million Xbox, 160 million PlayStation, right? Now this generation...
Not even close.
Not even close. Now this generation, Xbox 360, 84 million, PS3, 87 million. So they're like, hold on, they're catching up pretty fast in one generation, you know? Exactly.
I'm sure Shaggy.
I'm sure people were bowing down real deep over at Sony, you know, as deep as you can. How can I get into the floor? That's how they're bowing down in shame. But anyway, so that wasn't good for PlayStation. And now, as I said, with all the, you know, the Call of Duty exclusive content, Halo 3 came out, Gears of War, Mass Effect was another game that came out in this generation, big title. I mean, there are so many. Exactly, Skyrim, the 360. I mean, I sometimes see pictures of people that are like nerdy game collectors. They're like, my 360 collection has been completed. And it's like a shelf that's unbelievably huge. Like the library of that console is just massive. There are so many games out there for it. I mean, they continue with Forza Motorsport, and then later, obviously, famously, Kinect, right? Kinect came out.
Do you know why?
Why?
Do you know why the Kinect was born?
To spy on people.
No, because the Wii was released. And
right.
The Wii released, and it was like a meteor, bro. And PlayStation created the PlayStation Move. The PlayStation Move, more famously known as who? And what is that? Because nobody bought it. But no, I had a friend who had a PlayStation Move, and I thought he was an idiot for buying it. But the point is, another thing that I think we have to mention is just how a lot of really well-selling games, for instance, Skyrim, Fallout New Vegas, ran like cardboard on the PlayStation 3. Skyrim, till this day, cannot run on the PlayStation 3. Even Fallout New Vegas, like, something about the PS3's hardware was just really, really limiting. On top of the fact that they did not get rid of their really terrible software to game develop for, and Xbox still had this amazing, basically, customer service system where they purposely made it as easily as they could to make it easy for the developers to make games for it. I mean, from the OG Xbox to Xbox 360, they were just like home run after home run, and then 2013 came, and then
well then, wait, there's that. Then we're moving into the Xbox One era, right? Which is ironic, because
wait, hold on, wait. We have to mention the Red Ring of Death.
Yes, okay, that's true.
That was. Would you like to go first?
No, it's fine. I mean, it's just this iconic death of this console that you started to see everywhere.
But do you know how bad it was?
How many consoles bricked, you mean?
Yeah.
I don't know the numbers. No, do you know the numbers?
According to the documentary that they had, the Power On documentary, I can't remember which. I think this was like episode 3 or 4. It had a failure rate in the first year of nearly 100%. Nearly every single Xbox 360 they shipped out would Red Ring of Death. And it turned out the issue was something with the GPU, the way it was set, whatever. It was this really, really niche technical issue. It wasn't about heating. It was about the fact that every time you'd open it and close the console, it was the difference in temperature that caused like whatever the GPU was resting on to expand and contract until eventually it broke. It was basically like taking a rubber band and just pulling it and pulling it and pulling it until it snapped. That was a huge PR disaster for the Xbox 360. And the reason for it, at least in the documentary, they explained that it was because, first of all, they were for the first time making their own house software, hardware. They were making their own in-house hardware along with their own in-house software. So these two things simultaneously clashing. So it was just bound for something to go wrong. But yeah, it cost them $1.5 billion because the solution they saw that they had to take was they had to fix every single console for no cost at all. They had to do it, and it was $1.5 billion. And Steve Ballmer just said, "Do it."
Steve, I swear to God, behind the scenes, Steve Ballmer's forehead, veins exploded, dude, like in his forehead.
It's becoming more and more red, bro.
He's turning into like a red version of a Hulk or something behind the scenes. Like veins are just like protruding from every piece of his body. He was very, very upset. So, but ironically, I mean, we kind of spoke about the somewhat, in our opinion at least, arrogance that PlayStation had going into that generation and really losing. So now we're moving into 2013 into the Xbox One generation. May 2013 they presented their new console. People obviously were hyped. We're coming from the best and most successful console that really revolutionized online gaming almost in the console sector, right? The Xbox 360. What are they going to do next? So here they are hosting this overly produced event, in my opinion, where they mention the word TV how many times? I don't know. But
dude, the second that conference ended, the internet was flooded with compilation TV,
exactly. It was like an early meme thing.
It was a disaster, bro.
It was an absolute disaster. But funny enough, I feel now that you described the beginning of the Xbox idea before the first Xbox even came out, that they were always chasing that vision, right? I think, and this is probably a misunderstanding from them from the beginning, to believe that when you have this one box that you own in the living room, that you then own everything. Now you can sell them subscriptions, you can make so much money with that. But the truth is that's not how it works, because we're living in a competitive market and people want different things. Now nobody wants 10 devices, but people have 2 or 3. You have your little, whatever, Apple TV thing and maybe a console or something. So it didn't work. I think they misjudged how that product would impact and how people would use it. It happens often, in marketing, where you create a target audience in your head and you're like, and you map out how this person behaves, where they work and where they go, and you can do these scenarios and how they would use this technology. But often, even you put a lot of work and research into it, it misses the point. That's not how the real world works, and they misjudged it. They did that presentation in May 2013, launched the Xbox One, all about positioned it as a multimedia device, right? I don't remember, did it launch with the new Kinect, right? That was in the box for the Xbox One, right?
Oh, dude, that was a whole thing, bro. It didn't just launch with the Kinect. The Kinect was mandatory.
So that's it.
You could not buy it without the Kinect.
So not only did they have this embarrassment of them standing on stage and being like, Xbox TV, and it was just like, we just want to see really good games, we're gamers, we want to see, that's why we're here. Then they also had like, and here's how to use the Kinect, and here we have people swiping through the air like Minority Report and playing games, pretending they hold guns that are not there. The whole show was just like, you were just like, what just happened? Like, what was that?
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. And then it's good that you picked up on how the whole multimedia entertainment box thing was always in the background, because in the Xbox 360, they actually had HBO Max, and they did deals with Netflix, which at the time was still, I think, just weaning off of their CD mail business into an actual streaming service. So it was always in the background. It was always lurking. It was always there. And they did actually, in my opinion, they helped Netflix a lot by putting Netflix on the Xbox. And I think they were a decent reason in the serious popularization of Netflix.
Yeah.
But it's amazing how literally every single mistake Sony did with the PS3,
Mm-hmm.
Xbox did with the Xbox One. Like, verbatim, down to the price tag.
Yeah.
Because the Xbox One released for $499, right? United States dollars, which in today's money is $694, okay? Compare that to the PlayStation 4, which was released November 15th the same year, but it was released for $399. And on top of that, I don't know if you remember, but there was this whole debate about how you couldn't share games on the Xbox One, and it was allegedly, according to the documentary, that it was a sheer misunderstanding. But how they communicated how you would share games made people think that it was some kind of built-in DRM where you couldn't actually share games.
Yeah.
And there is this clip where Sony responded to allegedly Microsoft, how this convoluted explanation about how you can share games with Xbox One. So Sony, in response, released this absolutely amazing marketing video. So watch that.
This is how you share your games on PS4. Thanks.
Yeah, I remember that. That was like, it was a classic. I mean, that was obviously like a diss track from them towards Xbox.
Absolutely. It was an easy layup for marketing. I mean,
exactly.
And dude, by the way, another point that I would also like to add is, dude, the difference in response when Xbox announced the price versus the PlayStation. Bro, those guys were minutes away from ripping off their shirts when PlayStation said it was going to be $399. I mean, they were cheering. Some guy was probably crying. He was like, I'm going to name my daughter PlayStation 4, like a whole thing, bro. I mean, they really shot themselves in the... And then to add, like, insult to injury, they had... what was it called? Xbox Entertainment Division. Do you remember that? Because they announced, and we're making a Halo TV series, and it was just crickets.
So this is actually really interesting, right? That you say this, because also in the bigger picture, now Xbox is a beast. Now Xbox is a really big brand. It's kind of grown out of this initial uncertainty they had with the original Xbox. Now, and also with it, the gaming sector has grown, right? Like it's going bigger and bigger, bigger. It's more profitable. More and more studios are popping up, and it's pretty clear that gaming is going to be a big thing in terms of entertainment. People are going to be willing to spend money on it. So now you can see Xbox is expanding as well. It becomes this huge thing. You have like Microsoft's head of devices, I believe it was devices and studios, Julie Larson-Green, and you can just see like they're growing. Like now it's a huge corporation in and of itself that it is a Microsoft thing, but that almost sits on its own, right? Like it is so big and so powerful now. So, and I mean, they spoke a little bit about backwards compatibility in, I think, 2015 at E3 or something for the 360 and Xbox One. And I think, obviously, that was, also them trying to probably counter a little bit of what we just looked at, this huge scandal of not being able to share games and stuff and then being locked to the hardware. So they're like, well, at least we have backwards compatibility. So, but also generally, this was the first generation coming from Xbox, in my opinion, that just had all the way through a garbage lineup. The launch lineup was already not great. It's Dead Rising 3, Rise Son of Rome, which, I mean, it's
oh my God, Rise.
It's a tech demo. It looked very good at the time, right? But Killer Instinct, Call of Duty Ghosts, which was also not very good.
Yeah, the worst. One of the worst Call of Duty.
Really...
Do you know that famous clip where like we introduced women to Call of Duty, and it's just some dude running up and stabbing a woman? And
yeah.
What is the messaging behind this exactly? Okay.
So the whole lineup was good, and I remember for the Xbox One generation, we were always waiting. We were like, okay, the launch lineup is not great, but soon the game is it's any time now, and it's
any time now, guys. Just believe.
You gotta believe, right? So people were like, okay, that's so bad. And I mean, they did have a bunch of games like, I don't know, Sunset Overdrive, Halo 5 Guardians, which is also not, I don't think, very popular.
No, Halo 5 was not well received at all.
Not great.
No.
And there's lots of smaller games that are not bad. Like, for example, Sea of Thieves. I love Sea of Thieves, but it's like not... it's not like we're inventing a new franchise.
You bought this $500 console to play Sea of Thieves.
Exactly.
No offense to Sea of Thieves, though, but...
So there was really there was not a lot going on with the games, and we waited. This is an 8-year-long console generation from 2013 to 2020. And we waited and we waited. And I can only imagine how it must have been for Xbox One owners who actually, this is their, they spent money on it. They trusted Microsoft and Xbox, and nothing is coming. And oh my God. And at the same time, PlayStation is like on top of their game with exclusives on the other side. They're like bombing
God of War,
Spider-Man, the Uncharted series, Ghost of Tsushima, Last of Us, right?
Last of Us.
So all these games, like PlayStation is like doubling down on exclusives, but they're winning the game with that at the moment. While Xbox One, ironically enough, almost seems to come off from a similar point of arrogance as Sony did with the PlayStation now. They were very successful with the 360. They became arrogant, and now this is almost their downfall, right? They became maybe lazy, and
And to give an anecdote to that, also on the Power On series, I think this is like the 5th episode. Don Matternick, who was the CEO of Xbox at the time, allegedly walked into a meeting, an important Xbox meeting, and was like, "All right, we want to go from selling 30 million consoles to 300 million consoles." That's the idea. Was that they had shifted their competitive focus from Sony and by the way, Sony and Xbox do not consider Nintendo part of their market. They consider them they don't share the same market, which is, I always found interesting and cool. But he was Xbox executives or at least Microsoft saw that the next real rival for Xbox wasn't PlayStation or whatever Nintendo console was getting released. It was actually entertainment and media, which is why there was this strong shift in focus on TV. But yeah, classic. I mean, it really is Xbox One is the PlayStation 3 of Xboxes. I mean, truly.
At that time, Don Metric was still. He was the guy who presented the Xbox One, right? He was the head of Xbox. But I think he stepped down shortly thereafter, July 2013.
Yes, he stepped down literally 6 months before the Xbox launched. He's like, "Oh yeah, sorry guys, I tripped and fell up banana peel. Anyway, bye."
Bye, gotta go. And then obviously the era of Phil Spencer begins at that time.
Yeah, in 2020, November, 2020. Yeah.
Okay, so
sorry, early 2020.
Okay, so but then anyway, when did Game Pass launch?
Game Pass launched June 1st, 2017.
Right. And I think this was the beginning of their new strategy, right? You can see that they're trying a different thing. I think they kind of turned over a program that before. They then turned that into Game Pass. Obviously, at that time, it's not a big deal. I think they're establishing the idea. They're also exploring what that is and where it might go to. But it turns out that would then ultimately become their big hook, their big anchor out of this disaster that was the Xbox One. I think already at that time, towards the end of that generation, 2017, 18, 19, and so on, they were already contemplating with this idea of maybe not even launching a new box.
Maybe.
But that was also the time, that Stadia, I think, didn't do particularly well.
Oh my God.
And it's I'm not sure, I don't remember when exactly it was shut down, but it was clear that it wasn't a big success, I believe. So I think they just couldn't really double down on this idea of just a streaming box or something. And then in sales again, PlayStation is going ahead for this generation. 58.
PlayStation 4 is the second most successful console of all time. It is second only to the PlayStation 2.
That's it. Yeah. So 117 million. 117 million PS4s, 58 million estimated Xbox One. So again, from that generation, coming from 360 and the previous generation, it's a loss for Xbox. They're taking a loss, right?
Who could have seen this coming?
To be honest, I had hopes. To be honest with you, I remember watching the Xbox One presentation, and I wasn't as negative. I was like, okay, cool. People can say Xbox, show me TV. I didn't expect that it would backfire that badly, but people got really, really angry that it wasn't all about gaming and games. And I think the ultimate nail in the coffin really was, again, that they couldn't back it up with games over the generation. That there never was the 3, 4, 5 games over the generation where you're those are exclusives and they are must plays. You have to play them.
Yeah, agree.
So I think now we're in a position where Xbox fans are wary, right? They're not happy. They didn't get the games. Now we know a new generation will come, right? We know that Xbox is going to announce a console the next year at that point. But I think we also know that the Xbox One generation was a huge disappointment. It was a huge disappointment. Yeah. So And I mean, the sales reflect that. So I think the whole group of Xbox fans go somewhat weary and, just cautiously into this new generation.
Absolutely.
Thinking, what are they going to do next? What are they going to do next? So then, on November 10th, 2020, Phil Spencer gets up on stage and presents the Xbox Series X and Series S. It flows right off the tongue. Well, I mean, I remember there was speculation. Was it like, you got to keep it simple. Is it the Xbox X? Is it the X, something simple?
Yeah.
No, Xbox Series X. And now it backfires because a little tension here, but like with the new ROG Ally. Now we have what is it called? The ROG Ally Xbox Series X ROG Gold, or whatever it's called.
It's ridiculous. It's something insane,
They fucked up the naming so hard.
Yeah,
but so here they are launching it. 30 games they're claiming 30 games on day one, optimized for Series day one launch. I mean, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Gears Tactics, Tetris Effect. You can see why they have,
amazing.
30 games. It's
Holy,
30
slow down,
games.
bro.
Oh
slow down.
We have so much to offer. Look over here. We got so many games. What a launch lineup. Nothing there again where you're like, wow, killer lineup.
By the way, a huge goddamn downside. Every single one of these games was also going to be released on the Xbox One.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Why would I then buy a Series? Which, by the way, and do you know where it was first officially revealed? The Xbox Series X?
Like what venue you mean, or?
Yeah.
I don't know.
The very first reveal for it.
No.
It was the Game Awards. It was Jeff Keighley. Jeff Keighley himself was like, sometimes things get leaked, and there's the standard there that there's always going to be crazy announcements, but sometimes things don't get leaked. And then there it was the Xbox, which, by the way, in my opinion, what a terrible, terrible decision to release the X and S simultaneously.
Yeah.
In my opinion, you should have only released the X and then release the S later on.
I think their worry was if we release the X and it's expensive, right? It costs more than the other one.
Yeah.
People are going to be upset. How much did the X launch for? I don't have the number here.
So the X at launch was $499 and the PlayStation 5 at launch was $499. But the S launched at $299, which is actually kind of insane. Not gonna lie, that's insane.
Yeah, it's a great competitive price, right? But then ultimately, especially the Xbox Series S became, I think, a big problem for developers because it was really holding them back. It's not powerful enough, and they have to make huge compromises in their games just so it runs.
Huge mistake.
Yeah, exactly. Mistake. It was a huge mistake. I can see why they did that, but that was not smart to bring out two devices like that, in my opinion.
And then Sony did the exact opposite. We'll release this console, right? And then we'll release a small one that's even, it's cheaper and it's worse. And there'll be like minimal games on it because so many developers will have to sacrifice important things on it that they won't even bother, developing games for it. And then the PlayStation was like, oh yeah, here's a PlayStation Pro that's even more expensive and even better. Anyway, good luck. Bye.
Yeah, I know, right? It was so silly. Such a silly thing. But I think, to be honest, at that point it was clear because I think quite from the beginning the consoles didn't sell. Nobody wanted the Series X. I mean, not nobody.
Yeah.
So they had to
It's not that... Like, there was no major selling point. If every single one of your major games is also going to be released on the Xbox One, why would I buy an X? Why? Why would I do that? Like, I already have an Xbox One. If every single one of your games has backwards compatibility, it's still running on the generation before. And don't get me wrong, they did good things in that they refocused the effort on games. Phil Spencer was out there talking about games are our livelihoods or whatever, and I want to become a game one day, and when I die, I want to be put in a CD-ROM or whatever he was talking about. But, like, they did the right thing, but then they messed it up by releasing the S for some reason. Like, why would I buy a worse version of a console that is going to run games and is going to look terrible? Like, I don't know. I think that was just a terrible decision. I mean, I see why, in theory, it works, but when you think about it even more, it's just and on top of all that, the PS5 and the Xbox just recently increased their prices because of tariffs in the U.S., which is going to make it even worse. I mean, do you want to pull up numbers for how the PlayStation 5 sold versus how the Series X sold so far?
I do have it here, actually. So the PlayStation 5 sold 80.2 million, and the Xbox Series X and S 31 million as of June 30th,
That's
2025.
insane. Oh my god.
So you
That's
can
like
see
3 times, bro.
It's 3 times. It's 3 times. So they've clearly lost, if you want to call it, the console war. But to be honest with you, I think they realized that pretty early. When they launched the Series X and S, they were like, this is not going well. People are not buying into it. So I think they were like, we need to change something. We need to change in direction.
Yeah.
And that's obviously where Game Pass came in. And where they now say, you know what, the Xbox Series X is not the only place where you can play. You remember the campaign, everything is an Xbox, right?
Yeah,
This is an Xbox, this is an
yeah.
Xbox. So they're like, actually, on your phone, on your other whatever streaming key, you can now do things and play Xbox games.
On your smart fridge. That's an Xbox smart fridge.
Play Halo on your
cooler.
smart
That's
fridge.
an Xbox smart cooler.
And I think like you broke it down quite nicely in the sense that you can see how confused their strategy seemed. The whole way through, ever since the Xbox One launch, it's just confusing. Who is this for? Why are they doing this? You know what I mean? Yeah. It just feels like people with suits in boardrooms think it's a good idea somehow, and they don't really test it, but the guy in that suit said it's great, so they just push the idea out, and hundreds of those decisions are being made over a decade, basically. And now they're in this pickle where their hardware doesn't sell, nobody knows what it's for, why to buy it, and they have to kind of crowbar Game Pass into it. I found it, by the way. It originally was xCloud. That's what it was called. Xbox Cloud Gaming.
Yeah.
So xCloud, and then that kind of folded into Game Pass in 2020. So now it's positioned, as I said, around this Play Anywhere strategy. But this helplessness. And that's where it kind of got interesting, where they really started to get bold in their strategy. And they said, you know what, we're going to acquire people left and right. We need exclusive games, or we need more exciting games under our belt. And I think everyone agreed with that. Everyone looked at Xbox you need more games. PlayStation over here, we listed it already, from the Uncharted's to the Spider-Mans, all the games that people want, the exclusives. They have none of that, or nothing. They have Halo and these sad, outdated feeling brands. It's just like, ugh. Makes you feel like you're in some grandpa store or something.
They bought Activision Blizzard for $69 billion. And it was a huge time in the industry as well, where they consolidated them, and Sony just bought up as many studios as they could. Yeah. And the point I want to add is to give you an anecdote about that kind of culture, about like them trying to make the Xbox more than a gaming console. And when the original Xbox was being developed, and still, especially during that time in the 2000s and in the late 1990s, when the Xbox was just an idea. But in the 2000s, when they were developing it, Xbox execs would have random, leaders of Microsoft divisions, like, I don't know, the leader of EdXL or whatever. But just random high-ranking Microsoft employees would be like, Bill Gates really likes photo editing. Can we make photo editing in the original Xbox? Like, they were just walking around suggesting all these random things. And it's really unfortunate because another theme in the Xbox development cycle was very early on. They were trying to decide whether they were going to manufacture the hardware, or they were going to outsource it entirely to someone else. And they ultimately picked the we're going to buy the components, but we're going to manufacture it ourselves. But early on, there was a lot of debate about like outsourcing that to like Dell, or outsourcing that to like different, tech manufacturers. But everyone turned them down because you don't make money off of the piece of plastic. You make money off of the software. You make money because essentially you take royalties from games. That's how you make money from the console. Yeah. So when they were trying to outsource it, and even the Xbox execs knew this, but Microsoft was forcing them to, until eventually they convinced them that no, we're gonna have to build it like ourselves. But there was this idea that Xbox was just gonna be something that you can download on your system. Like, it was basically gonna be like Windows but for games. And it's quite ironic because now with Game Pass, it feels like this was like this long con about, well, first they're trying to force the Xbox people to make it a multimedia device. And in the very early days, we were trying to force Xbox to be this third-party software that you can download, whatever. And here we are, and it kind of feels like those people won. The people who wanted to make Xbox this multimedia, box for your the everything box for the living room, which I think was a tagline. And the people that wanted to make Xbox this third-party software is now They won. Because now, if everything's an Xbox, then officially nothing is an Xbox. Then.
Exactly. It is their admission of saying it's actually more about software. Nobody needs hardware anymore. Everyone has a phone in their pocket, and we're moving away from it. So they're kind of already admitting it. I've added up the numbers. They spent almost $80 billion on acquisition. $80 billion. I mean, a big chunk of it is obviously Activision Blizzard, but still insane amounts of money that somehow Phil Spencer got out of management and said, you know what, let's put $80 billion into these studios. And then obviously they shut a bunch of them down shortly thereafter. They had a bunch of redundancies and they're shrinking the teams, namely, and I really want to highlight this, Tango Gameworks, which that was insane. They made Hi-Fi Rush. They made Ghostwire Tokyo. That was insane. And also, it's a Japanese studio, and Xbox doesn't have that many Japanese studios. If you want to be relevant in that market and at least have some stuff, why do they shut them down? Arcane Austin, they shut down. It's like, if you have...
They shut that down after, what was it called? Red Fire, Red Page, or whatever. They had an awful game. It definitely didn't deserve to get shut down off of that, but Arcane Austin was a severe loss,
Yeah, Alpha Dog Games, Roundhouse Studios, so many. The Initiative, which are the guys who were supposed to make the reboot for Perfect Dark, which I think some people were excited about. We even saw a trailer for that, I remember. Even a gameplay trailer. Insane stuff, if I remember correctly. So it's wild. Here they are coming out, spending insane amounts of money, almost $80 billion, and then shutting a bunch of studios down. Again, seeming somewhat aimlessly, like a person who has unlimited money. So we're just doing this, and everyone's in panic, like a headless chicken running around.
Concepts of a plan, but they don't have a plan. But they have concepts of a plan.
That's right. It's like they have a starting point, and it sounds almost like a strategy, but they don't think it to the end every single time. And then part of that, also 2024, I think, was a huge update for them, business update, is where they came forward, and it was, what's her name, Sarah Bond and Phil Spencer in a specific stream saying, guys, by the way, our games now also come to PlayStation.
And now it's like, okay, it's over.
Exactly. So it was so many aspects in this generation now where you're like, okay, it's over. Them moving away from hardware, pushing Game Pass, them saying, our games come now to PlayStation, the redundancies. All that paints a very, in my opinion, clear picture of where this company is at and where they're going. In the beginning, funny enough, they only were like, no, only Hi-Fi Rush. Hi-Fi Rush is coming to PlayStation, and Sea of Thieves, and a few other little games like Grounded and stuff, where you're a little person. I don't know if you ever played that, but so they were like,
I think that was Obsidian, right? That was
I think it's an Obsidian game. Yeah, you're right. It's not bad. I think I played it on Game Pass once or whatever. But so they pushed these few games to kind of test the water, and at that time I was already like, everything will come to PlayStation now. You guys know this, right? So of course now it's Flight Simulator. Forza Horizon is also now coming to PlayStation. That was announced.
Dude, Gears of War I think is also on PlayStation now.
Is that announced? Possible.
I think it's on.
That's insane. So they're kind of holding back Halo, but then again, nobody really wants Halo. Who wants?
Halo is now on PC. Halo's on PC. So I mean.
So
and I think it's important to at least emphasize why this is such a big deal, because listen, man, nobody likes exclusives, right? They're so-called anti-consumer, although I don't believe in something called anti and pro-consumer, but okay, sure, whatever. The whole point, especially early on in the Xbox's development, in the original Xbox cycle, and also you could say in the 360, is there was a clear, very, very clear idea that the console is nothing more but the doorway to games. The console doesn't sell itself. The hardware doesn't sell the console. Games sell the console, right? So if you don't have games, you don't have a console. And so this idea, and because of that, that's why exclusives exist. When I was thinking, I quit console gaming around the PS3 and Xbox 360 era, but I thought about getting back. Anyway, I quit drugs. I quit playing my PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. But I quit. The reason I was thinking of getting back into console gaming was I wanted to grab PlayStation 4 because I wanted to play God of War and Ghost of Tsushima, and that was the only way you could play God of War and Ghost of Tsushima. Obviously now God of War is on PC. I don't think Ghost of Tsushima is, but that's why exclusives are a thing, and in fact that's why exclusives are so important to platforms as a whole. And so Xbox Game Pass is a phenomenal idea, but in my opinion, at least in the gaming console mindset, that had to be exclusively on Xbox. Imagine if Xbox Game Pass was specifically only on an Xbox console. Of course, they had to have, when they were acquiring Activision Blizzard, there was a whole thing about monopoly law and anti-competitive law that they had to. But eventually, they figured out, they're like, okay, Call of Duty will not be Xbox exclusive. Little did we know, nothing is going to be Xbox exclusive anymore. But it's such a ridiculous thing to do. Obviously, we're just some dudes on the internet. We're not industry veterans or whatever. But this is a tried and true method of exclusives selling the console. And even like personally, and I'm sure everyone listening and in the comments will feel like, well, yeah, I wanted to buy like a 360 to play Halo 3 or Halo 4 or whatever. I wanted to buy a PlayStation 4 to play, PlayStation Ghost of Yotai is coming out. Maybe a lot of people are going to even try playing PlayStation 5 just so they can play Ghost of Yotai. Like, exclusives are important. Of course, they're bad for the consumer, whatever that means, but they are very important. And now you're advertising the fact that you can play your games that you're creating, that you're developing, everywhere. Okay, then why am I going to buy an Xbox then? Why would I even think of doing that? There's still more than valid reason to buy a Switch, for example. Like, I wanted to buy a Switch just because I want to play Tears of the Kingdom and what was the Call of the Wild or whatever it was called, the new Zelda games, which are great and they're exclusive. That's what's motivating me, or at least that's the voice in the back of my head that's like, yeah, you should buy a Switch because of that. The voice in my head that also exists to buy a PlayStation 4 or buy a PlayStation 5 is because of the games I can only play on the PlayStation 5. Feel me? Like, it would be like if a TV program was like, hey guys, you know what? Every single time we air an episode that no one's ever seen, we're also going to place it on YouTube. What could go wrong? And Hulu, and this, and that, and another thing, and a billion other streaming services. Like, of course your, like, TV views or ratings are going to go down because everyone's just going to watch it on YouTube, everyone's going to watch it on Hulu, or everyone's going to watch it on, whatever streaming service that they have. It's such a confused idea, but I guess they're doing the Sega thing. I guess the Xbox Series X and S, I would imagine that there would be heavy debates about if this should be their Dreamcast, if this should be the point where they pivot away and fully go into Xbox Game Pass. I feel like generally the feeling online, and in my opinion, the feeling online should always be taken with a very, very hefty grain of salt. But the feeling online is this is going to be their Dreamcast. This is going to be it. They're just going to pivot entirely into being a third-party publisher, just like what Sega did. And then really, it's just going to be PlayStation that's left for, the so-called hardcore gamers. Because kind of taking it back to the 360, one of the big selling points for Gears of War was this was like a, to quote infamously, Evolve. If anyone remembers Evolve of all games. But they infamously called it. It was terrible. It was such a boring game.
The idea was good. One monster versus co-op.
Yeah, but then you implemented it, and it was just chasing around some dude. It was basically like Gmod prop hunt at the end of the day.
It's true. It wasn't so much fun. You're right.
Yeah, but they infamously called Evolve a gamer's game. Let that settle in for a second. But yeah, so it was just terrible. Like, but Gears of War was a so-called gamer's game. It was a game for hardcore gamers with intense violence that, and it had a good story. All around me are familiar places. I hate that song, but sure, whatever. Gamers felt emotions for the first time.
It is emotional. Yep.
Yeah, but yeah.
No,
so
okay.
Those are my final thoughts.
Disassemble your arguments there. Because look, you're right. You can see it everywhere. Exactly, like the example of Netflix and Hulu and whatever. We have this exclusive show. You only get it here. That's how you get people into the door. Get people to pay and subscribe, even if it's just for a month, and then they forget about it. However, the idea of exclusives to push your console is trial and tested, and it works, but it's outdated. And so is the idea of consoles. And that's why at this point in the history of Xbox and where they are now, I do give them credit for what they are trying now. Whether it will win or not in the end is a different question. But I think what they're trying to do is they're saying, we're moving away from exclusives, maybe because they're admitting failure, saying it didn't work. We're moving away from exclusives. We want to have a new incentive for people to buy it. And you're right when you say, well, Game Passes should only be on consoles. But in a way, for many people it is, because PCs are insanely expensive if you want to have a proper gaming PC. It's like double the cost of a console. So in a way, it is exclusive to consoles. Now, I have to say for myself, I didn't believe that Game Pass would necessarily work for me. But I did subscribe at some point, mainly for Call of Duty, because I didn't want to spend the money. So here I am subscribing. And dude, it is my main gaming platform at this point. It is the app that I open to play games. And it made me look back a little bit of where I came from. Obviously, coming from the 90s, I'm a PC gamer kid. It was all about like piracy, right? You would pirate all the games. Yeah. That's just what it would be. Unless it's a multiplayer game. But even those, I remember I played a pirated copy of Call of Duty 2 on PC that you could just play the multiplayer. Apparently it wasn't the problem. Allegedly. Exactly. I never did that actually. I'm just showing off. So pirating. Then Steam came into the equation and people had Steam and suddenly like, oh, an autumn sale, a winter sale, spring sale. I'm getting all these games for $3.99, $5.99. Why am I pirating these 40, 50 gigabyte torrents, right? So Steam then ended piracy for me at least, and I think for many other people as well, because it made gaming so affordable. But now I noticed the next shift. I open Steam once a week now. Even right now, it's a freaking autumn sale. I went through it yesterday, and I was like, I don't need that. I played on Game Pass. That I played on Game Pass. And I'm cleaning up my wish list because I'm playing all these games. I mean, I do play a subscription, but basically for free over on Game Pass. Look, the big question in the room, I think, for Game Pass, and with that, the future of Xbox to an extent is, can they sustain this model? Because at the moment, you quite regularly get good games where you're like, wow, that's, I wanted to play that. AAA games every other week coming to Game Pass. Some disappear as well from the program, but still, overall, I feel I'm getting my money's worth. Every other week I can open it, it's like, oh, here's 200 games. Oh, I'll try that one out. Like now I'm playing Monkey Island, this new The Curse of Monkey Island. That's on Game Pass. I don't think I even would have bought that for $10.
Oh, wow, yeah. That's totally that revolutionized gaming.
But it's the idea that
Monkey Island.
It is like
45-year-old game.
Listen, I have very fast internet, and it is literally like Netflix. I can
I have very fast internet to download Monkey Island. Yeah, bro. You need fiber internet to play Monkey Island. But like, for example, I've got one good friend. He's currently back in No Man's Sky because of the update. And, I can download that in 10 minutes, and I can play No Man's Sky with him. So when you have internet like that, then Game Pass really is like Netflix for games. Because you're like, oh, that looks interesting. Yeah, 10, 15, absolutely. 20 gigabytes, 50 gigabytes, no problem. Boop, 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 10 minutes, you have it. So, dude, I bet you that was a selling point. I bet you they were like, we're going to make Netflix of gaming. I'm sure of it. I can hear it of like course. They want it for sure.
It doesn't apply so much because so many people have bad internet around the world. But if you have the hardware and the internet, it's a great experience. And that's why, to conclude this, from my point of view, I have hope for the future of Xbox. Not necessarily for the next hardware or box, whatever. Maybe they don't even do that. But I think that service they have here, Game Pass, is slowly creeping into people's living rooms and gaming setups. And people, will it sell enough consoles? It will definitely be a huge success on a PC. And I can see it really becoming a competitor to Steam, just in terms of users moving over. So again, I think what Xbox and Microsoft are doing is they're shifting their business model. Maybe they release one more console, but even then I doubt they have very high hopes for that console to be very successful or competitive with the next PlayStation or something. Instead, less hardware, more service, subscriptions, good titles, licensing of good titles. They have their studio, they have the force, so they can keep feeding, Game Pass with exciting games. Even they are not on the level of an Uncharted, a Last of Us, and some of these Spider-Man AAA God of War games. But still, I feel it's a really, really good deal, and they are repositioning themselves at the moment. If PlayStation and Sony keep going down the road of it's all about exclusives, that makes sense, and that's actually going to play in Microsoft's favor and Xbox's favor, because now they're becoming a different product. They're becoming a different product that is not a box where you put CDs or some chip into it. It's a service. It's Microsoft everywhere. Will it be successful? I don't know, but I admire the balls, and I think, to be honest, in 10 years we're going to look back, and whatever has become of this Game Pass subscription thing, but we're going to say Game Pass, and when that kicked off, really changed the game. A little bit like we look back now and say, the music industry was in a horrible state, and here came Steve Jobs and Apple with iTunes, and they said, we're making a software, you download it, you're not buying an album, you're buying each song for 99 cents or whatever the price was at the time, and they had to reluctantly get all these people on board to be like, okay, how are we going to earn money? But fine, we're doing it. And that ultimately, 10 years later, revolutionized the music industry. That spawned Spotify and all these services. And now music is completely digital, for the better or worse. But that's how they were able to monetize it and democratize music for everyone around the world. And I think that's what we're seeing in the early stages with gaming right now. I don't know if it's going to work, but I hope so. And I think for gamers, that's a great deal. Pay a fixed price, you get all these games. I already look forward now to the next Call of Duty. That's going to, I mean, I'm not going to play it a lot, but I'm happy I get it for free. And I'm like, I'm going to keep Game Pass. I get this game for free with my Game Pass, you know? So more and more, it's harder for me to imagine my PC and gaming experience without Game Pass. Like, I didn't expect it, but it crept in. And it is here to stay, for me at least. And that's why I'm looking at it and I'm like, there's hope maybe. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I mean, I see what you mean, but the thing is first of all, the comparison to Apple and Apple Music, I think that at that time, that was a idea that no one has ever done before. I mean, I'm not sure when Napster was kind of going around, so, but that idea, let's just say, was very revolutionary at the time. What Xbox is doing, though, is they're like, oh, Netflix is having a streaming service, Hulu is a streaming service, HBO, like, there's a billion streaming services around, especially around the time of 2017.
But they're still the first ones to do it. They're still the first
for
ones.
Games,
I mean,
but for games. So the thing is, so they're not really doing anything revolutionary, in my opinion. And the point is that is gaming more mainstream enough, okay, that where it can be a Netflix thing, because Netflix or rather just the entirety of the streaming services like Disney Plus or whatever, you don't need any, like, the barrier to entry is -0, is -5. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think at the end of the day, there's a lot of things about gaming that kind of make people, I guess, uncomfortable or don't pull people towards it. I think it's always so interesting to me if you have someone that's never played games before and you drop a controller in their hands, it takes forever. They get so frustrated, they throw it away, and they don't know what to do. And so gaming is kind of one of those things where you can enter late, but the crushing majority of people start when they're kids, and that's you develop the hand-eye coordination and you'd think it's not a barrier to entry at all, but in my personal experience, I've seen, and this is anecdotal, so again, take it with a grain of salt, but I've seen how people struggle. They really struggle, even with a controller or even with, just a mouse and keyboard, to just even move or to use a camera and move simultaneously. Like, it's a real struggle for them. I just don't think that the library of games that they have bought is appealing to the audience that they want. In my opinion, something like that would work with Nintendo. In my opinion, what they're trying to do is the Wii, how it was so accessible to everyone and how simple the controls were, and how just discounting the motion part of it, which was the revolutionary idea. But the thing about the Wii was very accessible, and I think that's what they want Xbox Game Pass to be. But the truth is, there are games that are accessible on there, but there's also a bunch of games that are designed for the so-called hardcore gamer, audience. And I'm just like, nobody's gonna, I mean, for you at least, for a person who is in that hardcore gamer audience, and for me also in that audience, like, sure, of course it's super appealing. It's this super cheap, definitely, especially by today's standards, super cheap subscription where you can play a ton of $70 games. I mean, theoretically, you're paying, what is it? What is Game Pass? $15 now?
Yeah, something like that. I don't know. Yeah, but
$30.
And now they have a new tier as well. There's like Ultimate. So if you want to, play
so let's say 30. Let's say 30. You're paying $30 a month for a, let's say, $1 million worth of gaming library at your service. You know, would you rather pay $1 million up front and have 1 million games, or would you rather pay $30 a month to play games that collectively are worth more than $1 million? So there's that appeal to it. But I would also say, people also talk about how Game Pass is pro-consumer, which again is a term that makes me vomit internally. But this is gonna really, in my opinion, mess up a lot of the industry, where how are the developers exactly going to make money off of this? Is about the time you've spent, is about the cosmetics when you buy cosmetics. Let's say you're playing an online game only specifically through Game Pass. Is Game Pass going to take a cut out of that? Because they're already taking a cut from your game being on Game Pass, I would imagine.
Of course.
You know what I'm saying? And on top of that, there's also been this huge consolidation. There's been, ever since really 2021, when the world was opening up from COVID, it's been nothing but layoff after layoff after layoff. So this is pro-consumer now, but are we going to end up in a world where there's like is the Nestle-fication, the Pepsi-Cola-fication of the games industry, where everything is owned by 2 to 3 companies, and we're not really given a lot of choice. That's kind of what I worry about Game Pass. I think I'm still kind of championing what PlayStation is doing. They have a similar-ish system, but it's exclusively to their console. And if you think the idea, don't get me wrong, I still, as a consumer, I get the idea of exclusive hurts me, but I respect it for the competitiveness that it adds to the console and to the gaming space. And I see it as as necessary. I don't even see it as evil. At the end of the day, it's just video games. But when you say it's outdated, I just okay, maybe, I guess, but there's no other alternative so far. Nothing sells a console more than games. The games are the console, and the console is the games. So,
well, that's what Xbox is challenging.
Disagree.
But
Xbox is literally Xbox. Is it challenging it though? Because it's just creating a streaming system where they're like, okay, we're not going to make a console anymore.
No. What you're saying is they're selling. You sell a console with exclusives, and and the exclusive sells the hardware. But
yes,
what Microsoft is saying. What if, maybe we don't even need a hardware? You know what I mean? What can we do to not need exclusives? And they're exploring.
Yeah, you become a third-party publisher.
I think it's misinformation. I think your argument about the core gamers is valid. Because you're right. This is something, look, I'm looking from my personal perspective. I say Game Pass works for me personally. I'm a core gamer, right? I'm a guy, I'm on Steam, I want to play these real experiences. But I look, for example, at the next generation, all the kids, nobody's interested in PC gaming. As far as they go, it's like Minecraft, right? That if that's on PC, they accept it. But they're all on iPads. And you have a whole new generation, I feel, of gamers growing up who don't necessarily want these in-depth experiences anymore. They want quick, rewarding, colorful, popping things that they can do. So we don't know where gaming is going to go. And you're right. It might be that they're betting on the wrong horse here by basically building this product all around core gaming. It's like premium entertainment, right? It's like high quality games. However, I would also say your argument about kind of the Nestleification or something of gaming, and that in the end you have only a few like big corporations. That's probably true. You're right. We just saw
and Jared Kushner,
some Saudi conglomerate for 50 billion or whatever it is.
Oh yeah, is he
involved
fintech,
in this?
The venture capital firm that he runs. It's him, Silver Lake, and Saudi government. Jared Kushner is now a major shareholder. Yeah,
right.
Go on.
So, but my point is. So okay.
Oh yeah, they're high fiving. They're doing coke off of some hooker's ass right now.
That's what I mean. I didn't want to say this. Why didn't want to say this?
Allegedly, allegedly storing coke off of hooker's ass.
Just say allegedly.
But also
allegedly. actually. But anyway, I think the worry that it's all owned by a few conglomerates is not that big for me, because we still have this huge indie scene where a lot of innovation has happened and where it gets easier and easier to make a game, especially with AI coming up. If they incorporate that into Unreal Engine, dude, anyone can create anything in no time, I would argue. So sure, you have these big conglomerates, but at the same time, and they can only deliver a certain game that it's very hard to deliver for an indie developer, for example. But in the bigger picture, I'm not that worried, because you can already see it with Ubisoft. Here's this huge corporation, but they just make terrible corporatized games and nobody buys them. It's not that nobody buys them, but people hate their products. So there's that side of it as well. So I'm not that concerned. I think in the long run, a lot of these corporations will also wake up and say, you know what, we need to keep it eye level a bit. And I don't know, segregate small studios that then work on specific games that are a little bit more personal. Will be learnings. But you're right, also in terms of Game Pass, you spoke about like developers and them struggling, because I saw posts as well of the game developers on social media where they're like, this is killing us. The Game Pass is killing the industry. So look, I'm not in favor of it. I know the dark side of it. I know, but it's interesting because we're 50-50 on it. I think there's hope. I think this might be at a high price for the industry, but it will be a future, some form of future for Microsoft. And you probably don't. What do you think?
Oh, dude, no. In my opinion, they're just going to become Sega. They're just going to become a third-party publisher. They're going to pivot 100% in the, Netflix for gaming, and that's what they're really betting on. I'd be super, super interested to know, I guess, kind of morbidly, if there are any debates going on about releasing another generational console. I would love to see that. But I don't know, I just wholeheartedly disagree with the shift they've taken. Just because while it is pro-consumer, I just really hate the idea of, streaming games for something. I mean, rest in peace On Live, by the way. Whoever was involved with On Live is like rolling in their grave if they're dead. They probably killed themselves. I mean, I would kill myself if On Live failed.
To be honest with you, I don't think that's part of their strategy, right? Because if you have very fast internet, and there are games you can stream.
That's if you have. I mean, I feel like now, even with consoles, it's not the idea that you put a disc, in your console and then it immediately starts playing. I mean, that died with what PlayStation 4 and Xbox One maybe. But now, even if you buy a disc, you have to wait for the game to download on your console. Like the idea of just like you because consoles were the easy way to play games. And furthermore, I just want to add that consoles, you have to, by the way, discount Nintendo, okay? Because Nintendo are just their own thing, and they're one of those, like, Nintendo is the Apple of gaming in that it's entirely its own ecosystem, and no one can even come close to it, in my opinion. But the console itself is aimed at the hardcore gaming audience. If you look at Atari, or if you look at all these early games that ran, or game consoles that ran terribly, that before games were fun, as I like to call it, they were aimed at gamers. They were aimed at hardcore gamers due to go out of their way, this is one of their main hobbies. And so when you then go about and you buy a whole library of games particularly aimed at that hardcore base, and then be like, okay, we're going to introduce it to a whole new audience, that's not how that's going to work. That's two completely different audiences. I can't make, let's say, a streaming program for highly artistic, like, independent films, and then release it across theaters and be like, well, the general public's gonna no, the general public is not gonna like these highly artistic independent films, because this is an audience and this is an audience. I think what the idea they have is, in my opinion, I think what went down is someone was like, in the same way all those years ago when the original Xbox was being developed, and that Valentine's Day Massacre meeting where Xbox was on the brink of not existing, and Robbie Bach saying, well, let's not do it. Someone said, well, let's not do, I'm sure that there was just a furious meeting at creating Game Pass and at least, at the very least, making it, an international kind of thing and not limiting it to Xbox. I'm pretty sure someone said, well, if we don't do it, someone is. Someone in that room, in that executive room, foresaw this being an inevitability. Whether they're right or wrong, it doesn't matter. They believed it so, and they convinced all the executive around them that it will be so. And here we are with the Xbox Game Pass. And in my opinion, right now, don't get me wrong, I will never, argue against how just insanely good of a deal Game Pass is. It is. It is perhaps one of the best deals ever in the history of anything, right? But where this is gonna go down, in my opinion, it's not gonna be great for us, for the hardcore gaming audience, in my opinion. I think it's already hurting developers, and it will continue to hurt developers. And on top of that, it will 130% get more expensive as time goes on. I mean, what is Netflix now? Like nearly $50 or whatever? I mean, I know, because I know. Do you know Disney Plus is like $32 now, or $33 now a month? Yeah.
Without ads or something. Yeah, I know that. Yeah, that's crazy. That's why I'm not subscribed to these services anymore. Yeah, it is. No, you're right. And to be honest, I'm also thinking, like, what is my threshold for Game Pass? If they charge me $30
and I think this is we're entering into nearly the 2-hour mark. So we should probably also make a whole nother thing about pricing as a whole, and how gaming is being pushed to an entirely different audience. So I think this is a different conversation. But for now, I will just say that pricing is huge. Every single one of my friends is no longer, very rarely, if ever, are buying a game at launch, because it's just $70 is just too much for people. I mean, $60 was just on the brink. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And now games are, people, I don't know why this popped into my head, but Outer Worlds 2 by Obsidian was $80. They brought it down to $70. There was already this big discussion of games becoming $80, and now so far it's stuck at $70. But gamers are being kind of priced out of their hobbies. Quentin Tarantino had this point where the theater was supposed to be a working man's, leisure, because tickets were what, $3, $4, $5 when it got really expensive. It's $7. Now it's $20 or $25. Depending on the theater you go to. I feel like it is really important to say, what is your threshold? At some point, there's gonna be a point where you're like, no, I'm not gonna pay what is it, $50 a month to play, one $70 game for 5 hours and then another $70 games for 5 hours. And lastly, to hit on your point about AI and how kids are growing up, basically what my generation would call it brain rot. 100% disagree on. Listen, if the kids are growing up, if the iPad kids are coughing on their iPads watching, 3 tabs of Mr. Beast and Kai Cenat and AI slop TikToks all simultaneously, I think there's also needs to be a serious, response to all this, highly addictive media that kids are being exposed to. I mean, kids today, oh my God, I'm doing the thing where you blame different generations, but they really are. They're growing up. They're not even watching cartoons. They're not watching any kind of they're not being taught how to wait. And I think, yeah, these stupid kids these days who aren't watching the same cartoons I watch. But anyway,
right. That's all good. A conclusive final word, I think, to everything you just said. Game Pass and what Game Pass will become will turn you ultimately into an angry, disappointed man. That will be but even worse. I know, but in 20 years you're going to be like, you guys don't even know how gaming was before Game Pass.
Back in my day, you could only play games in DOS box.
Right off and stuff. Back in my.
No, Steam is not going anywhere. Steam is not going anywhere. It's too good.
Right in. Yeah. No, that's true. That's probably true. But anyway, so that's it. That's the big Xbox Roundup podcast. You guys can let us know in the comments. To be honest, I don't need to say this because not a single human being listens to this.
Everyone is.
Nobody.
Everyone is. How
Nobody.
dare you?
If you listen to this
No,
point, then comment the word. We need a word.
No, absolutely not. Do not comment Anaconda. Comment DirectX. Whatever.
Comment Phil Spence.
Yeah, Phil Spencer is
comment
love.
Phil Spencer is love or something underneath. Yeah, just say Phil Spencer is love in the comments so we know a human being watched it to this point. Yeah. That I'm curious. But that's it. Subscribe, smash like. Monkey Games, best channel on YouTube.
Bye.
Take care.